Indiana Fever salary cap has been put on notice 24 hours after this CBA agreement has been signed. Now, we know there has been major changes involving WNBA salaries, rookie contracts, and many things involving the roster. Now, I'm here to tell you there's even more details coming out about the current status of the WNBA salary cap. Now, one team that is going to be heavily impacted by this is the Indiana Fever. Now, we can all argue that the Indiana Fever has the biggest fan base out of all of the WNBA teams, but we ain't finna get into all that. We have to talk.
The ink wasn't even dry on the new collective bargaining agreement, and alarms were already going off in Indiana. Within just 24 hours, the financial foundation of the WNBA's most talked-about team started shaking under a shocking salary cap twist. What was sold as a new era of security and big money for stars like Caitlin Clark is now turning into a high-stakes pressure cooker behind the scenes. There's a hidden mechanism buried inside this deal, and it's putting the Indiana Fever on immediate. Notice this isn't just a small complication. It's the kind of problem that can tear a roster apart before the next season even begins. The days of easy growth are over, and what's coming next looks a lot more like a financial storm than a victory lap.
It totally hitting their salary cap. This is somewhat of a soft cap in the WNBA. Now, from my understanding, and based off what people have been saying, the NBA kind of has this same formality. It goes on to say, the new CBA also includes a salary cap expectation for minimum salaries according to multiple sources. There are 5 tiers of minimum salaries in the new CBA. The rookie minimum is $270,000. Players with 1 to 3 years of service will earn at least $277,000. The minimum for a player with 4 to 5 to 6 years of service will make
This is not some minor tweak or routine update. This is a full-scale reset of how money flows through the WNBA. Insiders are now confirming that the salary cap is running on a complicated tiered system that most fans haven't even begun to understand. 5 different levels of minimum salaries now stretch from $270,000 for rookies all the way up to $300,000 for longtime veterans on paper. It looks like a massive win for players across the board, but behind the scenes it's creating a soft cap situation. That front offices are already struggling to manage what looks like a raise is actually turning into a serious financial puzzle.
1,000 off the calorie sheet. This is what Mike is talking about. That $277,000 is not going to be on the salary sheet. Now, for example, if deliberately for Isabella Harrison signed to a veteran minimum of 26, she will earn $300,000, but it will only account for $277,000 of the team's salary cap. So there were 2 minimum salary tiers under the previous CBA and the veteran minimum. So Mike is very much right based off what I'm reading in regards to the salary cap. Moving on to another story, we have to talk about Jason Whitlock. Now, Jason Whitlock looked like he's falling back.
Right now, the Indiana Fever are sitting at the center of this entire storm, and the pressure on them is unlike anything else in the league, with the biggest fan base and the brightest spotlight. Every move they make is being watched, and every dollar is under scrutiny. Reports suggest the new CBA includes cap exceptions that allow teams to pay players more than what officially counts against the cap, so a veteran might earn $300,000 but only $277,000 hits the books. It sounds clever on the surface, but for a team trying to build around a generational talent like Caitlin Clark, it introduces a level of complexity that can spiral into complete chaos.
Love with the WNBA because he reacts to the current status of
that happened
WNBA.
With the WNBA and their CBA agreement had anything to do with proper business or these women getting what they're owed or what they earned or what they deserve. This is being given to them to execute an agenda. They want the next group of leaders to all be in support of the alphabet movement, the disruption of the nuclear family, the destruction of the nuclear family, the destruction of a Christian culture.
While the league is celebrating these headline-grabbing salary increases, critics are coming out swinging and questioning the entire foundation of the system. Leading the charge is Jason Whitlock, who is not just criticizing the numbers, but challenging the direction of the league itself. He's calling the WNBA a welfare-driven operation, arguing that these salary jumps are disconnected from real business performance. According to Jason Whitlock, this isn't about revenue or merit, it's about pushing a broader agenda, and that claim is lighting up debates across the sports world.
Or what they deserve. This is being given to them to execute an agenda. They want the next group of leaders to all be in support of the alphabet movement, the disruption of the nuclear family, the destruction of the nuclear family, the destruction of a Christian culture. And so they are making alphabet mafia soldiers the heroes for and leaders for your kids.
The tension is now hitting a boiling point because the Indiana Fever are the one team truly driving attention and economic momentum for the league. Jason Whitlock argues that this sudden flood of money is not organic growth, but a forced push to elevate leadership and narratives that many fans are divided on. He claims the league is prioritizing ideology over performance and that the new system is quietly redistributing resources away from the teams that are actually generating interest. It's a controversial argument, but it's gaining traction fast as the Fever try to survive under rules that don't seem built for their success.
For them getting overpaid. Caitlin Clark and the alphabet agenda, but let's listen to Stephen A. Smith exaggerate Nneka Ogumake's impact.
Your sister's leadership during this time is going to be something that's going to go down in annals. It may not be appreciated at this particular moment in time because we don't understand the magnitude of what she did and what she ended up pulling off. But as we learn more of the particulars, more of the specifics, some of which you already highlighted, and we recognize and we learn what she had to go through to get to this point and how that's going to lead to future negotiations.
On the other side of this debate, Stephen A. Smith has stepped in with a completely different perspective. He's praising Nneka Ogumaike as a transformational leader and calling this agreement a defining moment for the future of the league. According to Stephen A. Smith, this deal finally gives players the respect and compensation they've earned after years of being undervalued, but not everyone is buying that narrative because many believe that without the explosion of attention brought in by Caitlin Clark, none of these changes would have happened. The league is now split between two powerful viewpoints, and neither side is backing down.
Gave the welfare sport more welfare money. The WNBA is a welfare sport. It's no different than women's soccer. That was a welfare sport for 40 or 50 years. Take money away from men, give it to women, shut down football programs or underfinanced football programs, throw that money into women's soccer because we need more lesbian, feminist leadership. That's what this is all about.
When you really break down the numbers, it starts to look like the league is trying to fast-track its way into relevance. A rookie minimum jumping to $270,000 is a massive leap, and veteran salaries climbing to $300,000 only add more pressure for the Indiana Fever. This creates a serious challenge because building a championship team requires depth and experience. If every veteran suddenly commands a bigger share of the budget, it becomes harder to surround Caitlin Clark with the pieces she needs to win. This salary cap isn't just a boundary anymore, it's starting to feel like a cage closing in.
As a bunch of women who can't stand men, who are down with the LGBTQIA plus movement, who are hardcore feminists, who don't care about any man, the welfare, the strengthening, the leadership, the authority, the holiness. They don't care about any man, and he's applauding it out of arrogance, foolishness, the desire to remain in power, the desire to remain in the good graces of the feminists and the alphabet mafia people.
The deeper you go into the situation, the more complicated and unstable it starts to look, because the criticism is no longer just about numbers, it's about influence, power, and the way narratives are being shaped around the league. Jason Whitlock has sharpened his stance by turning his focus toward the media environment surrounding the WNBA, arguing that voices like Stephen A. Smith are not just offering opinions but actively protecting the system that benefits them. He claims there is a growing pressure within sports media to align with certain viewpoints in order to maintain status, access, and financial security, and that this pressure is preventing honest conversations about whether the league can truly sustain these rising salaries. According to this perspective, what we are seeing is not organic growth, but a carefully managed image where criticism is softened and concerns are buried under celebration. At the same time, Nneka Ogumaike is being elevated as a central figure in this. transformation with major platforms highlighting her leadership role in securing this agreement and framing it as a historic win for players, but critics argue that this narrative leaves out the uncomfortable question of where the money is actually coming from and whether the current revenue streams can support this level of spending long-term. The Indiana Fever are now caught right in the middle of all of this because they are not just another team, they are the engine driving fan interest ticket. Sales and national attention largely due to Caitlin Clark, and that puts them in uniquely risky position because if the financial model fails, they are the first team that will feel the impact. The concept of a soft cap with hidden flexibility sounds manageable until you realize it encourages teams to stretch beyond safe limits, creating obligations that depend entirely on future growth continuing at an aggressive pace, and if that growth slows down, even slightly, the entire system begins to tighten. Teams could find themselves locked into contracts they cannot sustain, forcing difficult roster decisions that weaken competitiveness and reduce fan engagement, which then feeds back into declining revenue, making the situation even worse. It becomes a cycle that is incredibly hard to escape. The Fever in particular are facing a scenario where success actually creates more pressure because the better they perform, the more expectations rise and the more complicated their financial decisions become. Front offices are now forced to think several moves ahead, balancing talent contracts and cap mechanics in a way that resembles a high-stakes puzzle where one mistake can set the franchise back for years. Add to that the cultural and political narratives surrounding the league, and it becomes clear this is no longer just about basketball, it is about identity, perception, and long-term sustainability. The comparisons to other leagues like women's soccer continue to surface, with critics warning that relying on external support or artificially accelerated spending models can only last for so long before reality catches up. Meanwhile, supporters argue that this is exactly the kind of bold investment needed to push the league forward and finally close the gap in visibility and compensation between men's and women's sports. What makes this moment so critical is that both sides could be partially right, and the outcome will depend entirely on how the next few years unfold. If revenue grows fast enough, the system holds and the league enters a new era of stability, but if it doesn't, the cracks we are starting to see right now will widen into serious structural problems. The Indiana Fever are effectively the test case for this entire experiment because they sit at the intersection of performance, popularity, and financial pressure, and how they navigate this landscape will likely determine whether this new CBA becomes a blueprint for success or a cautionary tale for the future of the league.